I'm just taking the dog for a walk around a lake near me. Otto, hello, hello. Come on in, let's go. Unfortunately, this is a lake that you're not allowed to fish. And I thought I'd relate to you the story of my first ever public carp fishing trip onto the continent to France. At this point, I've been carp fishing for many years, over 40 years, but I'd only ever been to France on a fishing trip once, and it was a couple of years before, and we'd fished a pay lake, and we'd booked the lake out. There were 5 or 6 of us, and it wasn't fishing particularly well. So we stayed there. I was there a week basically. Long story short, I caught one fish. One or two of the others didn't even, a number of the others didn't even catch. And I just found it frustrating because you choose your swim for the week and you're pretty much stuck in that same swim for the rest of the week. And if you're not on fish or you're not catching fish, you can't do anything about it. So that kind of got me thinking, and I'd seen posts and videos of public fishing in France, and I thought, well, that's a bit of me. I'd like some of that. You're pitching your own wits against different fishing situations. If you're not catching, you can move. There's lots of different waters over in France, rivers, canals, lakes, all on a public ticket. And if you work hard, you've got a good chance of catching one. So that first trip was to be, I planned it for April 2023, so only a couple of years ago. I've only been carp fishing, public carp fishing in France for a couple of years. So that was April 2023. I'd done a bit of research online. I'd seen some YouTube videos, and from that I'd worked out a sort of area that I could go and fish. Now, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, so I'd chosen an area in France where there were lakes, rivers, and canals all in that area. So if I turned up and my chosen spot wasn't fishing well, or I wasn't catching anything, then I could always move to another spot. So it gave me lots of different options, and hopefully over that week I could make something happen. So when the day arrived, I usually get a late ferry, or these days the Channel Tunnel, as it's a little bit cheaper and you can travel through the night when it's a little bit quieter. So on this occasion I'd done that. I booked a ferry, I think, at around about sort of 10 o'clock from Dover to Calais, and then travelled over to France. And then it's quite a long drive at the other end to get to this area, quite a long way south. And France is a big country, so I think it was 7 or 8 hours drive to get down to the location. And I was excited. I drove all the way through, absolutely knackering, but I driven all the way through. So I arrived at my destination just before midday, or not long before midday, and I've been travelling for about 13-14 hours at that stage, so I was absolutely knackered. But I had a quick look around at a couple of spots and decided to fish on, well, it's a canalised section of river, fast flowing canalised section of river that the French authorities use to generate the electricity. So I'd parked my car up on a safe looking sort of housing estate, and I was just unpacking my car, or my van, and oh, hold on, the dog's just done a poo. So that's the dog poo bagged up. Apologies for that. You can see there just behind the trees the lake that I'm walking around today. This is actually, as I say, no fishing. there's a river system runs through it, and it's basically a filtration lake that cleans up the dirty water flowing in the river coming out of Birmingham. So actually you can see down here there's quite a lot of mess and detritus washed up, all the plastic bottles, polystyrene, from years and years of muck coming out of Birmingham. You seen Otto? Anyway, back to the story. So I'd arrived, parked up in my first spot, or first area. I was just unloading the van, and I got talking to a French gentleman who was walking his dog, and he wanted to practice his English. My French was at that time schoolboy at best, you know, sort of O-level French or GCSE French. So, you know, we got talking, and I asked him if it was safe to leave the van parked in this area overnight. And true spirit, I mean, I've always found the French to be very kind, especially if you're polite to them and take the time, to perhaps learn a little bit of the language. Anyway, this guy offered to allow me to park my van in his, well, not quite in his garage, but in his carport, and he even gave me a key, or electronic fob. Otto, this way, to access, because it was behind an electric gate. Yeah, so that's a good shot there. You can see the lake in the background. So it would have been impolite to refuse. So that was good. I could put the car somewhere safe. And what I decided to do, as it was getting into evening at that point, I went down to the canalised section of the river, and it's fishing just below a barrage, and the water coming over, is flowing quite fast. So you're fishing with 8-ounce leads, 8-ounce gripper leads, and just dropping them over the margin shelf and allowing them to sort of wash in and settle, and then you're baiting 20, 30, 40 yards further upstream to try and get your bait to land around where your hook bait is. So I took the rods out for the night and got my head down. Now it's a day fishing area, but I figured it's quite early in the season, travelling in April, sort of mid-April. So I figured I'd get away with it if I kept my head down. So I just got my head down for the night, left the rods out, and short story short, no action during the night. I caught a small barbel, which kind of gets your heart going when you get a pull on the rod, but no carp, and I hadn't seen any carp either. So I thought, right, well, we'll move on to the next spot. So this was the Saturday going into the Sunday. So Sunday, I thought, well, I'll have a go on the reservoir. So this is a big pit, a big reservoir attached to the canalised section of the river. We're just coming up to an opening so you can see the lake a little bit better. So let's just show you that. There we go. We can get down to the bank, and the edge of the bank here. Again, all those washed up bottles and all that mess. You get a much better view of the lake from here. It's chocolatey brown at the moment because we're in the middle of winter and we've had a lot of rain. Like I say, it's a big old pit. It stretches up. This is just half of it. Well, not even half of it. There's a gap there which we'll come to a little bit later that opens out into another section at least as big as this section. And I don't know whether you can tell, but if you go sort of 20-30 yards out there, that's where the flow is. You can see the water moving from left to right. Anyway, let's continue our story. So where was I? Yes, on the Sunday I decided to fish the reservoir's second location. I didn't want to fish the big open area of the reservoir because I just didn't know where the fish would be. I either didn't have a boat with me, or I didn't have the appetite to start blowing up a boat and all the effort that takes. So, and I was hoping I'd just be able to catch one from the bank. So I picked a spot on the edge of the reservoir where it connects to the river, or to the canalised section of the river, and I put the rods just in the crease where the water, the change between the water flowing and the water, becoming still as it enters the reservoir. And again, I fished the night. It's a beautiful spot. Parked up in the car park because it was like public access car park, and slept directly behind the van. Again, no action through the night, but then early in the morning, fast take on one of the rods, and I'm hooked into something, feels a good size. It beats me up a little bit, then I get into the edge and thinking it's going to be my first carp. No, catfish. Well, that was a bit of excitement. Take on one of the rods. Didn't know what it was until it got in. Unfortunately, it's the wrong species. Catfish of about, I would guess around, I didn't weigh it, but it'd be around 30 pounds. But yeah, so that was nice to get a bit of action, but disappointing that it wasn't the intended species. So again, not having seen anything, not caught anything, talking to some of the locals, and they were saying that there's not much being caught from, this is the French anglers, there's not much being caught from the reservoir at the moment. I thought, well, I need to try something else. For the next day, let's plan to fish the river again, but this is a day only spot. So now the spot on the river is it's an island in the river, but you can wade onto it, and it's quite a well-known spot in the area. There's been quite a few YouTube videos of this part of the river, and some by all accounts some big fish in there. So I was quite looking forward to fishing that. So I gone across in the evening that same day, the Sunday, and I put 4 or 5 kilos of, waded over onto the island and put 4 or 5 kilos of bait out, in the area that looked pretty good, with the intention of coming back and fishing it the following morning. So, and then got up early in the morning, and I was actually, that's another thing I forgot to mention, I'd got with me, instead of a barrow, I'd got my bicycle trailer, which I've been using to good effect to fish some of the Birmingham park pools and reservoirs in this area. And it just means, you can get to some of those out of reach spots a lot easier. And this spot on the river, on the island, was quite a way away from some of the car parks, so it would have been a hell of quite a long barrow push. So I thought, well, I'll take the bicycle trailer and see how that works out. And actually, it worked really well. So I parked up in the car park and then got the bicycle trailer set up and cycled down to the river spot on the island, waded across, and I fished it all morning. Well, we're just going to come into to the point where, I've just got to, this looks quite overgrown, so I might need to force my way through here a little bit. Doesn't look like anybody's fished this for a while. Sorry, there's no fishing, or anybody's been here for a while. Just try and tread down some of these brambles. Not really sure if the dog's going to be able to follow me. Let's see if I can find another hole. Gosh, these brambles are really, really stringy. I don't want some cutters. There we go. I think we're more or less through. One more set of brambles to navigate. Ow. Yeah, really not prepared. I think next time I come this way I might bring some cutters. Duck, get under those branches. Otto, can you get through? You might not be able to get through. Come on then. Come on then. Good boy. Yeah, good boy. Yes, good boy. So this should take us along, if I can get through here, this should take us along to a point where you can get a view of both sections of this lake. Oh, look, that's a bit clear there. Doesn't look like there's been anybody down this way for a while. Ooh, more brambles. Normally I'd have my phone mounted on a gimbal which would keep everything nice and steady, but a few weeks ago some scumbags broke into my van and took everything they could find, and I didn't even realise I lost the gimbal. I think it was in my karate bag because I'd taken it to a tournament to do some filming at a tournament, and obviously they'd taken that along with a bivvy and one or two other little bits, and it damaged the lock to the van, so that's being repaired tomorrow. They've drilled the barrel, so I'm about to buy a new barrel and keys and get that refitted tomorrow. Here we go, look. This has not been has not been viewed or fished for a very long time. By the looks of it, water's up a bit. Normally you can walk out onto there, so perhaps you won't get as good a view as I'd hoped, but the lake carries on down that way, the flow from left to right. This is quite a narrow gap between the islands. You can see that log, look, caught up in the flow. That spit of land opposite is an island effectively, and then the lake stretches up that way over weir into the river and the inflow, and then widens out here again and up that far end, which we'll walk to as there's an inflow. It's not looking from a fishing point of view very inviting. What do we think, Otto? Worth fishing? Hey, no good? No good. Okay, let's head back to the path then. I haven't really spotted that either, but there's a few trees come down here, look. They must have been caught up in the winds that we've had. We've had a number of storms this autumn winter, haven't we? And there's at least 3 trees come down there, blocking the path a little bit anyway. Good boy, keep going. I think you're completely tangled up. Come on then, I'll try and get you out. Come on, good boy, come on then. And again, good boy, you can make it. Good boy. Yes. Look at these teasels, look beautiful. And we're through, back on the path. Thankfully, that was a bit of a nightmare. Yeah, so where was I? I think, so we're on the island. I'd cycled down with the bicycle trailer locked the bicycle trailer up against some railings, and then hoiked my gear over onto the island early in the morning to do a bit of fishing. There were some other anglers on there. Like I say, it's quite a popular spot. Yeah, with the French as well. There was another angler on there, silure or catfish fishing. But I spent the morning on there. Didn't really catch anything. Well, didn't catch anything. Saw one or two carp. But of most note, I caught out of the corner of my eye, further downstream, what could only really have been fish jumping out. It's a couple of 100 yards away, but you know, the sort of the splashing and the leaps and the I could see out of the corner of my eye they looked like carp. So I thought, okay, well, I need to pack up. In the end, I had to pack up a little bit early because the guy who had very kindly agreed to, you know, let me use his carport, he was saying, "My wife's at home. Why don't you come and say hello and have a cup of coffee?" So I bought him a bottle of wine and headed out early and bought him a bottle of wine on the way, just to say thank you. But on the way back, I put 3 or 4 kilos in. I had a quick look at the spot where I thought I'd seen these fish jump, cast around a little bit with the lead just to make sure it's reasonably clear. The rivers are quite snaggy over there, and I put about 4 or 5 kilos of bait in with the intention of coming back and fishing that the following day. So that was the plan. In that evening, after I'd been to see the French guy, say hello or onto the train. So that evening, I thought I'll go over to the canalised section of the river and just do a few hours fishing close into the reeds, because at this point, you know, we'd got a bit of sunshine coming through and those reeds were lighting up, and I thought, well, maybe that's an area where the carp will move through. So I did a few hours just into the evening in the reed swim. Again, no action. So I made my way back to the car park I'd slept in the night before near the river, with the intention of getting up early again and fishing the spot that I baited. So at this point in the trip, we're up to Wednesday, and I've still not caught anything. I've fished 1, 2, 3, 4 different spots without anything to show other than a catfish and a barbel. So as to plan, I got up early in the morning, cycled to the new spot, got set up, put the rods out. I was fishing 4 rods using braid, fishing the tips high so the line was out of the water. Quite a snaggy area of the river, but if you kept the lines high, then give you the best chance of hooking and landing a carp. The morning passed without any event, and then at around about midday, 12:30, something like that, I had swans go through, fly through the line. So 3 of the rods the line was broke, snapped up. I'd lost about 40-50 yards of braid. So, put yourself in my shoes. We're halfway through the trip. I've fished 5 different, fishing the 5th spot, caught nothing to show. I'm starting to think, crikey, this public French fishing is not quite what I expected it to be. What have I got to do to get a bite? But as with any of your fishing, when it's getting tough, you've got to dig deep. So I had a word with myself, put some new leaders back on. It didn't matter, I'd lost 40-50 yards of braid. There was still plenty of braid on the spool, and I was only lobbing them out for say 40-50 yards, 30-40 yards at most. I was wading into the river and just lobbing them out, and then bringing the rod back to the bank and putting on the rest. So I didn't need a lot of line on the spools. So yeah, so I put new leaders on, recast them out, and 15 minutes, 20 minutes later, I get a screaming take, and I'm into my first carp. It absolutely beat me up. I mean, the one thing I will say about these river fish, they're incredibly strong. So I got my first fish in the net, and I look in the net, and it looks big. I can't believe it. My first French carp, and and it looks every inch, 20 kilos plus. So I get it up into thing, and you know what? I haven't made a note of the size of every fish, but that one was over 20 kilos, a common. Looking, bearing in mind it was April, it was pre-spawn, so they were all in good condition, starting to carry some of that pre-spawn weight and fat from overwintering. So I think most of the fish were up in weight. So this one was about 44 pound, over 20 kilos, and I'm absolutely over the moon. Not quite trip made, but at least it's restored my faith in some of this French public fishing, and what a fantastic first fish to catch. So I don't know whether I'd even got that rod back out, or whether it was one of the other rods that went, but 20 minutes later, the other rod goes, another rod goes, and I'm into another fish, and that turns out to be even bigger. Again, another common, completely different shape though this time, and that's another thing to say about these French carp, and particularly those river fish. You get all different strains. I guess some of them may have been stocked, others would have been flooded in from some of the surrounding lakes, but you get a mixture of commons, mostly commons, but some lovely French mirrors as well. Right, we've more or less reached the other end of this lake now, and this is actually a spot. I'm just walking down to a spot which was the first place I ever fished and caught a carp from this lake. Again, it's looking really, I don't think anyone's fished here for a long time, but you used to be able to get right down. There weren't any reeds here before. You can get the rods out, and you're fishing out into the flow, into the inflow. The water comes in from the left into this big pit, flows off to the right out into the open water, and you can just wade in here and chuck a rod out. And I think the first fish I had out here was like a koi carp of about 23-24 pound. I think later I found out it was named Domestic Violence, which is a great name for a carp. I mean, it did look pretty savage. Yeah, it doesn't look like anybody's fished here recently. So you can't easily get all around this lake by foot, but we'll walk up this way and just see how far, see if we can get through to the inlets. Go on, Otto, that's it, carry on, go on, good lad. And maybe I can just pick up a bit of the story. So yeah, so I caught two fish, both 20 kilos plus, so what had started out as a difficult trip. No, Otto, he's chasing the ducks. What had started out as a really difficult trip, had turned into a dream come true, with two big fish, two big French carp landed, and I'm feeling really confident of more bites, as you can imagine at that point. So I think there was only one more bite that day on my smaller carp, and then pack up, load everything on the bicycle trailer, and head back up to sleep in the car park in the van. Yeah, you can see, look, that's one of the areas where the water's flowing in. Comes in over a sill further up and then flows down through here. And the carp do get in here, not when it's flowing as fast, and probably not in the winter. There's also another inlet over there, so we might try and make our way over there. Right, this part of the pit is up near the road, so, and it's more accessible, so there's a bit of a path here. This gets trodden a bit more. I've got to be careful with where I step though, it's quite slippy. Quite rocky. So this is that inlet that we've just seen, and we can walk over this. That's looking out over the pit. That looks like somebody's brolly spike or something, or bivvy arm. And they're out by the road now. And we'll just have a quick look at the inlet here, and then maybe I think we'll double back, Otto, to the car once we come this far. It's difficult to get any further. Let's take a look at the inlet. Look at that torrent of water coming through. You won't be able to see it, but there's a sill flowing out from another lake. All this water coming through and down into the big pit. Lovely. Well, actually, we might have a walk along the point. If the brambles are not too bad. Oh yeah, this looks okay. Quite a few pike anglers fish this area, so I think it keeps it quite clean. Well, keeps it quite clear. Yeah, apologies if the camera's not very steady, but like I say, I had my gimbal nicked, so just using a normal selfie stick. Here we go. See, this is quite a nice little swim, although a bit tight. I might have fished here a couple of times, but that's looking out onto the lake. The main sort of inlet to our left, and then that other smaller inlet just to the right, coming in just there somewhere. And I think you can just see over there the gap that we walked past a bit earlier, where I had to fight with the brambles to get to that spot. Yep, heading back. Good boy. That's it, carry on. Keep going. Over the bridge. He's off, yes, he loves going exploring. Yeah, so that was day one wrapped up, and finally some fish in the bag and a couple of really big river carp, so I'm proper made up. So I sleep in the car park and I'm ready, and I put another 4 or 5 kilos of bait in, so they've got something to settle on overnight, and then I go back on the bicycle trailer, sleep in the car park, and get ready for the following morning. Now I should say sleeping in the car park is not quite the luxury you might hope for when you go on these trips. So if you can imagine, this car park is right next to a train line, which is an overhead train line. So you've got the freight trains running right the way through the night. So you're lucky if you can get off to sleep. And once you get off to sleep, you know, after you've done a day's fishing, you're usually knackered. And I'm quite a heavy sleeper, so not such a problem for me. But even so, I'm thinking I can do without this. I really could do with sleeping on the bank. Even if I'm not fishing, I could do with sleeping on the bank. Anyway, so we get up early the following morning, cycle to the spot, get the rods out, eagerly awaiting some more action. And sure enough, you know, it's you know, another good day. I think again at least another 3 runs. Of most note, there's a big mirror, and I get this thing in the landing net, and you know, it's a fantastic fish. I always wanted to catch one of those big mirrors, big French mirrors. You know, and there it is. There's a big mirror in the net. That is a fucking donkey. I think that was, again, it's another. I think that was slightly bigger than the bigger common. Just shy of 21 kilos, about 45 pounds. But you know, again, another fantastic fish. So at the end of day 2, I think I've caught about 6 fish. Trip's going well, but you know, I'm getting a bit tired now. I don't really want to be sleeping in the car park, but it's day fishing only, and if you get caught by the garde pêche, you know, you will be fined. And I've since been back to that spot, and you know, we've had garde pêche come and visit us, and they've been fine, but you know, because we're following the rules. But they don't even like you sleeping on the bank. But it was early in the year, and it wasn't busy. There wasn't it wasn't high season. So as it turns out, I didn't get any visits from. I didn't see the garde pêche. But there was, in the area where I was fishing, there was some trees and, you know, sort of wooded area trees where I could get tucked away, bivvy up, bring the rods in, and just sleep on the bank for the night, because it's a park basically. So really, I'm not breaking any rules. So that's what I did for the rest of the trip. Rather than cycle back to the car park, unpack, pack up again, cycle back down each day, I ended up sleeping on the bank. And because I kept relatively low key, didn't draw attention to myself, and brought the rods in, didn't fish at night, that was all fine. So that worked out really well. By this time now, we're into the final day of the trip, and we're heading back along the track. So we're into the final day of the trip. You know, I'm pretty pleased with how everything's going. Again, expecting more bites, and on that particular day, I'd seen a boat going up and down the river with some catfish anglers on it. You know, and they've been fishing the same area. Anyway, I got an absolute flyer of one. I think I should say something a little bit about the sort of snags, and you know, and the way these fish fight. I mentioned it earlier, but so I'd had, over the 2 or 3 days, I'd had a number of really fast takes, and I'd pull into the fish, and because it's quite snaggy there, I was giving them a bit of stick, trying to stop them, you know, running on a long line and kiting on a long line, because you know, chances of getting in, the chances of them finding a snag, and chances of you getting them in is pretty bad. So I was conscious of this, so I was trying to stop them running too far, trying to hold, try and stop that first take as soon as I could. And using braid, it's quite brutal, and I was using quarter wide gape size 4 hooks, I think, and they were opening out. So I had that issue, and so the next take I got was an absolute flyer again. I mean, the ones I'd lost, I was thinking, oh, these must be those, you know, turbocharged mid-20 commons or something, you know, and I'm losing mid-20 commons, so, you know, maybe that's not so bad. So that's the way I kind of let myself down gently, you know, that I hadn't lost any big fish, because it's not nice when you lose any fish. So I'd had a few hooks open out, you know, through bullying the fish and the hooks not being up to the job. So this next fish, it ran, and I pulled into it, and I couldn't stop it. Come on, Otto, going this way. Good boy. Good boy. What, you want a treat? Don't know whether I've got anything. Stop following me. I'm trying to film you. Here you go. I think I might have one of the biscuits. Good boy. Yes. Yeah, so where was I? So, yeah, so this fish has run, and I can't stop it. I've latched into it and I can't stop it. So I can see these two sets of snags down to my right at different distances away from the bank, and this fish is heading in that direction. So, you know, it's got too much line that it's not going to miss that first snag. You know, it's going around the back of that first snag at least. But the furthest snag is some 20 or 30 yards beyond the first snag. So in my head I'm saying, okay, let it go far enough and then hold on to it and let the carp go downstream between the two snags. So that's exactly what I did. As soon as I let it run far enough, and you can tell by the angle of the line and how it's entering the water, far enough just to get what I thought was just far enough to get past that first snag with the line angle, and then down into the pool below, where I was hoping, you know, it should be relatively snag free. And it worked to a point. The fish went down into the pool, but the line got trapped around, just caught around the top of the first snag, so it's just a branch that's been washed up and sticking out of the water. So I've got my chest waders on. I can just, you know, so I've waded out. I can get just about close enough to that snag, and thankfully, I, you know, flick the tip up and get the line off the top of the snag. So the fish is down in the pool, playing it. Hopefully, it's clear, you know, and it should be relatively plain sailing from here to get the fish in. And I'm playing this fish. It's tiring. It's getting ready to. It's going to get closer and closer to the net, and it just gets caught up on the back of something. I can't even see a snag there, but these things are obviously hidden and under the water, so you don't know what's there. And this fish is trapped behind the snag. Now, the way these snags are shaped, they're like tree branches that are forked, and then they're just stuck in the mud, or their roots, you know, the shape of a willow root. Sort of a hand shape, and these fish just get caught behind the back of them in the branches. So they're not particularly heavy snags, but they're rooted into the ground, or they're not particularly abrasive snags, but these fish get trapped behind them, and you can't, because of the angle, the line angle, you can't get sufficiently above them to get them out. And with this particular snag, I tried wading out and I could not get the line free. I couldn't get it you know, to shift free of this snag. So you know, we're in stalemate, or actually, you know, the fish is winning. So I remember there's these sea lure anglers in a boat, just fishing the pool for the you know, for the catfish. So in my pigeon French, I shout over to them, aidez-moi, which is actually now incorrect. It's Mayday. I'm shouting aidez-moi, and at least they understand me. They come across, they have to go across quite shallow water in this boat, so it's quite tricky for them. And I can see they're actually filming it. And you know, they get above the fish, or they get close to the line, and they're asking me, do you want us to pull it out? And I said, just lift the line up, lift the fish up on the line, and then let go, and I'll play it from there. And it worked perfectly. As I say, the fish was just at the back of the snag, and all he needed to do was lift it away, and then it was free again. So this fish comes free of the snag. I'm in quite fast flowing water up to my chest, but I managed to get it netted. Anyway, these guys are filming it, so and they come onto I land this fish, they come onto the bank, and they you know, and they're talking to me, and they're in my pidgin French, but they're much better English, and they're explaining, and they're doing some filming, and it turns out that they're with the Fédération de Pêche for the area, and they're you know, they're being paid by them to do a film, a promotional film about this part of France and the fishing and the culture in this area. But it's, you know, it's a YouTube based French fishing channel where they're fishing mainly for predators and catfish.
You need help? Please.
Et lui, c'est un bon, il me plaît ce mec.
Ouais, il est mortel avec la... With the net on the head.
Ok.
Yeah. It's in the net. Donc là, on retrouve notre ami British avec son beau poisson. Donc bon, bah écoutez, on n'a jamais parlé de la carpe, c'est pas mal, c'est l'occasion, là on a une belle démo.
Et puis ça montre un peu le potentiel du Rhône. Hein.
Attention au suspense. 18, 70, ouais.
40.
Vous avez dit combien? Vous avez dit... Shoot.
So I had my photograph taken with them, and you know, and that turns out to be a fish of, I think it's about 17 or 18 kilos, so just over 40 pound, and a fantastic river common. And actually it blew the misconception I'd had that these really powerful, fast running carp were small ones that I was losing, because you know, that's a good fish, and it really tore off and beasted me up. So that fish landed. That was the most significant. I caught a few other fish that trip. I think I ended this session, well, the last day, with a total of 12 fish for those three and a half days of fishing where I started to catch. You know, and that was you know, so that was a really good trip. So we're on the homeward straight now, Otto. We're back on the, you know, heading back towards the car. Okay, so that's the first trip more or less wrapped up, just the long drive home. But as you can imagine, I'm a happy carp angler. I've you know, I've had a good trip. I've had, what was it, 3 fish over the 4 fish over the sort of 40 pound mark. 3 of those 20 kilo plus. That's your kind of French target, isn't it? 20 kilo plus. And yeah, headed home. No more dramas. Usually there's always some kind of drama on these French trips. You've got to be prepared for anything. No dramas. Headed back. Happy bunny. Yes, he is. Good boy. Do you want a biscuit? Is that what you're after? I don't know. There we go. So that was my first solo trip to France. Turned out in the end to be a great success. If any of you are thinking of, or haven't taken the plunge, of thinking of travelling and doing your own public water fishing in France, I'd encourage you to have a go. Just do a little bit of research, make sure you're visiting an area where there's plenty of options. You know, you've got lakes, rivers or canals to fish on. Most bodies of water have got carp in them, and then once you've got a good area, then, or you found an area you think might be give you a good opportunity, then just go on find out which region you're in, go onto the Federation website and go and look at the information about the rules and regulations about where you can fish, whether you can fish at night, where you can fish day only, things like, you know, rules around whether you can retain carp, that sort of thing, because you don't want to get caught out breaking the rules. you're a visitor in their country. You need to we need to honor and respect their rules and regulations. And if you do that, then you shouldn't have any problems. And you might, like me, you might catch yourself some big carp. So we're back at the van now. We're going to head off. Hope you've enjoyed this video.